Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network. Me and Dallas King make our way through the A24 filmography, bringing you interviews with the talent involved, and now we explore the TV shows, and this week we turn our attention to the acclaimed first season of Ramy. Joining me as ever on this odyssey is Dallas King. Welcome back, Dallas.
Thanks as always for having me.
I know it's been a few weeks since you've been on. We've had guests on in that time since we kind of discussed Comrade Detective, so it's good to have the gang back together.
Yep, I've been busy. I've been busy binge watching our latest TV show. So
exactly, it's a hard work being an A24 project podcaster. It's just binging films, binging TV show. But we're joined by a special guest this week, a critic, podcaster, and that is Awais. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awais, we pose this to every guest that we have on the show. What is your opinion on A24 and what are some of the highlights of the filmography for you?
I've always been a big fan of A24. I think 2017 was the big year for me. I mean, it was just the big year for A24 in general. That was the sort of year that I think I fell in love with their movies. First with A Ghost Story, which is probably my favourite. But obviously that year they also had Good Time and Lady Bird and The Disaster Artist, which were all, I think, incredible films, which have obviously led on to things like Hereditary, which is another one of my favourites. Ex Machina and 20th Century Women are also probably up there as well.
We kind of have been continue to be light on the ground for A24 Hour News, but we have a release date. No, it's not for The Green Knight or Zola or the stateside release for Saint Maud, but it's for Minari. So it has a release date of December 11th in New York and Los Angeles before a wider release in February, which does seem quite fanciful considering the state of, well, the United States at the moment. We discussed it on our last episode, me and Dallas, but what are you looking forward to, Minari, Awais, or is this one that you've maybe not had a chance to check out the trailer yet?
No, I actually am looking forward to it. I think it looks fantastic. I know it's getting a lot of great award buzz, and that trailer was really powerful. And Stephen Yeun's just amazing in everything as well. So I'm looking forward to that. I wonder what it'll be for the UK release, because I imagine that's US, so... Obviously, A24 is a bit weird here with the UK, so hopefully we get it soon as well, though.
Yeah, there's been no word on a UK distribution yet, and my feeling is I just can't see sort of New York and Los Angeles having cinemas open for any sort of real length of time. It will be the most limited run, and it will probably be one of those crazy stats that we've seen it all before, where it'll be like, Minari has the highest, screen... takings of the entire year, and it'll be like one screen was showing it for like a day and they managed taking like 3,000 or something like that. It's all too typical. Dallas, do you think this is going to get much of an American release? They seem to be going all steam ahead with this film more than any of the other ones, which could be a bit frustrating, I guess.
Yeah, I think it'll be very limited screenings just to qualify for the awards and stuff like that, and then it'll probably be fairly soon, probably 2-3 weeks, and then on to VOD or something like that. So I think, yeah, I think it'll be more difficult to see this film on the big screen than it is sometimes to get some of that limited edition merch before it sells out. So actually, Lee, I just wanted, before you've missed out the big news of the past couple of weeks, and I can't believe you forgot it, and that was the fact that The Green Knight has apparently been rated R for violence, some sexuality, and graphic nudity. I mean, come on, that's big news. Well, potentially, depending on your opinion of Dev Patel.
I can't believe we got to the stage of the podcast where it's like news of like, before it was like, Ari Aster's got this new film coming up. It's untitled. What could it be? It becomes Midsummer. What about this TV show or this or that? And then it gets to like this time of year. It's like something's been rated to, it certainly, I think they put up a great tweet, A24, where it was like swords will cross. So yeah, I'm very, very excited for that one. I know we recently dropped an interview with Tommy Blanks, who was working on title design for the film, and they said that they were still refining it in the kind of edit process. So I'm desperate to see this film, and I don't think A24 can put out any sort of tweet at the moment without everyone piling on, asking them when like the release date for The Green Knight is coming out. So it's building a lot of buzz and a lot of frustration.
I was about to say, do you think they'll drop it on demand, or do you think they'll try give it a theatrical run?
No, I think that given it has been so long and it's nearly coming up for 2021, I have a feeling they may hold off until South by Southwest. They were meant to have a screening this year. When was that? So like beginning of March or so end of March or something. So I have a feeling that it's been as long. They're probably maybe going to stay and commit to the fact that they were going to play South by Southwest and just do it a year later, perhaps.
Yeah, my feeling is that would have if something's like Saint Maud, something that is just a film that they're distributing in America, they're not the producers on it, like say The Green Knight. If that's managed to survive this long without getting released in America or onto VOD, I think The Green Knight will have no choice but to go into cinemas. I agree with Dallas. Might not be South by Southwest, but it's going to get some sort of rollout. But it's going to be into the summer period, and if they can afford to keep these films and give them the theatrical rollout, I'm more than happy to wait. But I can't see it going to VOD. Would you, if you had the choice between waiting 6 months to see it or getting on VOD, what would you go for?
I mean, I would rather wait. I just love seeing A24 movies in a cinema. I just love seeing movies in a cinema, and I would much rather wait because I got to see Saint Maud in the cinema, and it was a fantastic experience getting to just wait and have that sort of cinema experience because it's so much more immersive. And even though they are sort of smaller films, I mean, the sort of craft in an A24 film, I think it deserves to be witnessed on a big screen.
Do you think did you see it at the London Film Festival in 2019?
No, I actually missed out. I saw it recently when it got its sort of short cinema release before the cinemas closed down again.
It's crazy to think like when that film got shown in London that it would be like potentially 2021 before it would ever make it stateside. I still find my mind struggling to comprehend what kind of world we're living in for a theatrical kind of rollout.
Yeah, because I think it was the fact that A24 had picked it up. They announced that before the London Film Festival, which was what piqued my interest to watch it in the first place. And yeah, it's going to be a good year and a half before they eventually get to see it. But I mean, Sundance is coming up in January. I think they're announcing the lineup probably sort of mid-December, so maybe a Green Knight announcement around about then. But yeah, A24 have been very quiet recently, so Minari, I guess, suggests that yeah, they are still in business and are going to be moving ahead slowly and surely with new releases. But yeah, they've been holding out on us. They've been keeping us waiting.
They've kind of moved away from distributing and releasing films to just like selling overpriced candles and it's like towels and so on. So like that's A24. That's what they've done in 2020. They're just like, yeah, we're not going to release critically acclaimed movies by David Lowery. We're just going to like punt a $45 candle, and you're going to buy it.
I mean, they've given us a few movies, obviously in the rocks. Sorry, on the rocks and First Cow and stuff, which is keeping us going, I guess.
What did you make of sort of their kind of? Have you seen First Cow and On the Rocks?
Yeah, so I've not seen Boy State, but I've seen First Cow, which I absolutely loved. I thought that was fantastic. And On the Rocks, I also got to see in a cinema when it released, and I quite enjoyed it. Don't think I'm as big a fan of it as maybe everyone else is, but I still thought it was just a nice sort of road trip movie, I guess, sort of father-daughter bonding story.
It's one of those ones we can only tease it at this stage because it's not been recorded yet, but we will have a couple of On the Rocks interviews hopefully to come in December and January. But obviously talking of Boy State, it actually won the Critics' Choice Award for best political documentary, so that is it immediately jinxed for the Oscars coming up. But as we've kind of spoken about, like we have moved away from discussing movies because we have no movies to discuss. We have got to the end of the line. If only we'd started this podcast 1 year later. But we're going to continue with our TV journey, and we're going to split Ramy into the two seasons as opposed to sort of an overall conversation. So for those not familiar with Ramy, it follows a first-generation American Muslim Arab who is on a spiritual journey in his politically divided New Jersey neighborhood. It explores the challenges of what it's like to be caught between an Egyptian community that thinks life is a moral test and a generation that thinks life has no consequences. So Dallas, we'll start with yourself. What was your first introduction and initial reaction to Ramy Season 1?
I mean, I'd heard of it, and I'd sort of seen that it got that Ramy himself had won Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Musical Comedy at the Golden Globes this year. So it was on my radar, but because I think it was on Hulu in the States, it was just never something that I'd gotten around to seeing, but thanks to a 7-day trial on Stars with Amazon Prime, I have Blitz Season 1 and 2, and I have to say that I am very glad I did. This was a real surprise, and I have to say it was definitely one of the best shows that I've watched this year.
What about for you, Awais? When did you sort of first encounter Ramy, and what was your initial reaction?
So I actually only encountered it quite recently. Obviously, it won the sort of Golden Globe, and then I'd sort of heard little bits about it on Twitter and things, and I'd sort of seen Ramy Youssef pop up on my Instagram feed, and I'm a big fan of these kinds of shows. I love Masters of None, which is sort of similar in this sort of similar vein to this. So yeah, I decided to check it out, and like Dallas, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just thought it was a fantastic sort of look at the things it wanted to explore. It did it really well.
Yeah, for me, I only just watched it for the first time a couple of weeks ago. It's been kind of on my radar for a while, but as kind of Dallas mentioned, Hulu does not exist here. There's not the gateway that you usually get with something like Amazon Prime, Netflix, etc. to translate to the UK. So sometimes when you hear something is going straight to Hulu in America, I sink to my knees thinking, I'm not going to be able to kind of catch that. I know they've had some really good originals, and it's like, UK release date when, for example. So it's been really frustrating, but it's like the Stars, channel or app was something I wasn't really aware of. And I think someone posted a couple of weeks ago where it was like, it's going to be 99p for 3 months if you sign up now. And I'm like, I will finally do that. I'm going to be in lockdown for a bit longer. And, I'm sure I'll get £3 worth of material out of the first 3 months. And then I noticed Ramy was on there, and I was like, I'm immediately on it, messaged Dallas. And then when I watched that first season, I've not gone beyond the first season yet. I'm trying to pace myself. But usually me and Dallas will share our initial reactions with each other. And, it's kind of a big surprise. I think I watched the first 2 episodes and I immediately messaged Dallas going, I've just started Ramy. God, this is excellent. I was immediately blown away. And I watched it all in one day. It's a manageable 10 episodes of like 30 odd minutes. But it felt really good to binge something that was that good and that pure.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to binge. I rewatched them for this episode, and I think I watched all 10 in about 2 days.
I think I did the same. I think I was about 2 days for season 1 and about 2 days for season 2. So,
kind of, what do you think of sort of Ramy as this lead character? I mean, this was my first introduction to Ramy Youssef. Awais, what did you make of him as this sort of leading character for a TV show? Was he someone that I think we all kind of really engaged with this TV show, but did you engage with him as the lead character?
Yes, I did. So obviously in recent years, I've really taken a liking to these sort of stories. Obviously The Big Sick and Masters of None and these sort of like Muslim-oriented stories. And I'm always skeptical going into them because I'm always curious as to how they're going to depict the sort of Western Muslim, and I was a bit worried about this, but what I really liked was that he is a very flawed character, but he feels so authentic, like everything he does, everything he says, his motivations, it's, as you said earlier, pure. I think that's the best way to describe Ramy. He is a very authentic Muslim and a very authentic American, and I loved seeing his personal struggles sort of dealing with the two, and I thought it was just a very real and very raw, because actually what I was surprised by was when I first watched it, I thought it was going to be a sitcom, so I was sort of expecting a lot of belly laughs, but I was surprised to find that it's actually not as funny as I thought it would be. Not in a bad way by any means, it's just I feel like it's more sort of sad and more sort of powerful, and I just really love that aspect of it and of his character and the other characters as well in particular, and his family as well.
Yeah, we'll touch on aspects of that a little bit later. But Dallas, what did you make of sort of Ramy as this lead character and Ramy Youssef's performance?
I mean, I think I sort of agree with Awais in that. I think I was going in maybe expecting something funnier, like more of a straight up sitcom. I mean, with the sort of the first episode, sort of tease it up as, he's this guy who's like, struggling to find love and stuff like that, and it's about navigating the modern world of relationships and stuff, and whether he goes down the usual way of hooking up with random people in nightclubs, or if he goes the more traditional way of having his mum and dad set him up with someone. And so there would have been that sort of storyline. But I think what it did is, and this is what kind of A24 do so well, is they showcase like a sort of different side and like a culture that maybe a lot of people in the sort of the Western world sort of aren't truly familiar with. Like Menashe did it really well, the Farewell and stuff like that. And it's like I say, it's very authentic and it's not sugarcoated. It's not sort of dolled up for Western audiences. I mean, it is what it is. And I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that we probably haven't seen this type of sort of Egyptian American sort of Muslim character on TV before. I mean, I think Riz Ahmed said recently that sort of growing up when he was doing it, when the roles that you get offered by Hollywood are, if you're a Muslim, you're either the tech guy or a terrorist. And I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of the films I watched growing up and stuff like that featuring Muslim characters probably fell into those categories. So it was actually really nice to see a different side of that sort of culture.
Yeah, I was the same. I definitely played into what A24 they try to do with their brand, sometimes more successfully than others, is provide that unique perspective on something. And I know there was a lot of criticism last year when sort of A24 seemed to get kind of a lot of kind of targeted criticism about sort of representation from people of color in shows, where they would be like, why did things like The Last Black Man in San Francisco not get this huge role? Like, why can't I buy it potentially on DVD or Blu-ray, but I can buy certain other things? That it felt like they had done a disservice to the people out there that would kind of engage with their films that weren't maybe seeing themselves reflected in a lot of their films, which do look at sort of younger white women and men. And I felt that was a somewhat fair criticism, because we've gone through nearly 100 odd films, and by and large that is the main focus, is on that perspective. But then when I watched Ramy, I didn't know what to kind of expect. I expected a comedy. I expected Ramy was going to be strictly the only lead. I didn't expect it to be sort of this much more larger generational, somber, reflective, and quite bold with some of the creative choices that they made. I just thought he was excellent, and he's become one of those things where I now want to watch more of the things that he's in. I want to kind of dive into some of his comedy, read into articles and interviews, and I'm probably going to wait until the end of season 2 to do that. But you touched on it there, Awais. Sort of, it is a TV show with a Western Muslim lead. How important is that type of representation to someone like yourself? And do you feel that it sort of nailed that experience potentially?
I think it's very important. I mean, I was born in Scotland, lived here all my life. So growing up, I didn't really, I guess I'd sort of just got into this very Western mentality, and I didn't really ever think of representation on screen. And then obviously in recent years, we've started seeing more of these stories appear on our screens, and it's seeing them myself that I'm actually realizing how much I kind of need them and how important they are to sort of see that representation for myself. And I think in that sense, this show really nails it, because it does capture a lot of, I guess what my life has been like, and what a lot of other Muslim lives are like growing up in these sort of Western societies where they have to deal with culture and society and all these sort of pressures from family and pressures from, friends and things like that. And I think in that sense, this series even, it really nails that, because it shows those struggles in a very sort of authentic and enjoyable and funny way. And actually, a question I wanted to ask you guys was, because something I always wonder when I see these sort of stories, obviously I can instantly put myself in those shoes. I can, relate to it so deeply. Do these shows alienate you guys? Or, is there a level of accessibility for you guys as well in seeing these stories told as well? Because that's something I've always wondered with things like this.
I can answer that. I actually planned to bring this one up a little bit later, but now's a really good time. For me, I love to learn about different kind of cultures, and I feel like it's been done a disservice, really, sort of that kind of Muslim representation on screen. I think of some of the shows in media that I've assimilated over the years. 24, where you were either this terrorist Muslim or you were some good guy Muslim. Like that was pretty much the binary kind of choice. But what I really liked about this and was able to relate to the character, and it's probably the same with a lot of A24 characters, is I may not be going through their experience, they may not be the same background as me or live in the same place as I do, but I kind of related to his sort of almost like quarter life crisis and the journey he was going on. You know, he's trying to become his own person. He's trying to find out a job that he's good at. You know, we've all got probably worries and anxieties about, are our jobs going to be safe? Are we going to be, you know, potentially back living at home with our family? You know, those are things that he kind of is going through at the moment. And I watched that and I thought, yeah, I can see parts of me in that experience. I'm not a person of faith. I've never really been. You know, I would go to Sunday school as a kid. So those parts were completely alien to me, but were really interesting to see. And yeah, I still looked at him and I was like, you know, no matter what his faith or color of skin is, we're kind of going through a lot of the same issues and crisis in our life. You know, we've got a lot more that unites us than divides us. And yeah, I could certainly get quite a bit out of Ramy.
Yeah, me too. I think it certainly didn't alienate me. I think the lead character is likable enough, and I think he sort of, there's, like you say, there's this universal struggle that he's going through that anyone sort of can relate to in a similar way to, I think, when we discussed 8th grade, it's like where neither of us are like, you know, sort of 15-year-old girls, but we've both been through sort of high school and stuff like that, so we can, you know, see, you know, compare our struggles to that of someone else going through it. And yeah, I mean, we've all had sort of troubles of, you know, trying to live up to the ideas and the sort of things that our parents want for us, trying to find love in a digital age and stuff like that. You know, there's lots of commonalities in there, but I think the show is really good at not doing that thing of alienating you and not making it purely from something. It's about it's an American thing. It's about a New York or New Jersey sort of thing, and you know, it's, you know, his faith is important, but it's not either. It's not the one thing that defines him. I think is really quite interesting about it as well. And I think it's and I really like the fact that, I mean, I guess we'll talk about this as well, but the fact is the way it sort of doesn't all revolve around Ramy. I like the way that certain episodes sort of then explored the sort of the family members. Like each member of the family almost got like their own sort of mini episode to explore them further. I thought as well was really good and show a different side of that sort of culture.
What I found interesting, and you touched on it there, Dallas, is that it has this broad range of characters in his family, and I think it's very easily done, you know, negatively so in a lot of these kind of TV shows or films where one Muslim character basically is an amalgamation of an entire faith and of millions, of tens of millions of people. What I really like about sort of Ramy's approach is it's about individual Muslims that all have their own different challenges because of their age, their gender, their way of life, whether they're a business owner, whether they're an employee. You know, I thought there was quite I can't remember the exact moment, but there was like the business owner where he was like, oh, someone's put like a bit of hate crime outside mixed between Ramadan and sort of that. It's really good kind of publicity for my local business, for example. Everyone is an individual in this that just perhaps share a faith, but they all meet it in different ways and they all have their own different experiences. What was your sort of feeling about sort of that approach? Did that catch you by surprise, or was that a pleasant surprise for you, Awais?
I enjoyed that. I mean, it's something you don't see, I think, in any show, regardless of what the story is. It's that sort of focus on individual characters because it makes the world feel very lived in. And that's what I did notice sort of halfway through the first season. As much as I was enjoying it and as much as I was enjoying Ramy's story, I did think that the supporting characters were a little weak. And part of me was sort of frustrated by that because I knew that they would all have such interesting lives and you know, their own personal struggles. So when you come to episode 6 and it focuses on Dina's character and her struggles, and then episode 7 focuses on Mesa and her sort of loneliness, I really enjoyed that because it gave these characters so much dimension. And then I think later on it makes their family dynamic so much richer because you know that every single person is going through their own struggle. And again, it sort of comes back to authenticity. It just makes it feel so real because, you know, in real life, in a household, it's not just one person that has a struggle. You know, every person is going through their own thing, and in the first few episodes of Ramy, you don't really notice that because you're so wrapped up into Ramy's life and what he's doing, and so it was sort of nice to just break away from that and then expand on the other characters, and even sort of with Ramy himself, when you have that episode where he's younger, sort of going back in his life and expanding his character that way. It made the world feel so much richer because that's something we don't get in any story, and I just think it adds so much to it.
What did you make of that, Dallas? I agree with Awais. That surprised me big time. I expected a 10-episode season about this character to be the dominant character in every single episode. And I was so surprised where there would be episodes where it's just about, he's not even in it, it's about him as a kid. Or it's a focus on his mum, his sister, his friends. You know, Ramy can easily at times become the supporting character in this overall kind of larger story. What did you sort of make about this sort of individual kind of, you know, representation of life, really?
I thought it was a really sort of bold decision, because, you know, I mean, it could have easily not paid off. I mean, I think back to something like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which is, you know, basically entirely African-American family, but, you know, you had those supporting characters like Hillary and Carlton and stuff like that. But when watching it, I think I always remember, it's like, even if those guys had plot lines, it would probably normally always revolve or include Will Smith's character would be involved in some way or another. The fact that, you know, Ramy is maybe in like one scene at the beginning and then sort of just fades off, and then it becomes the mum story or the sister story. And this is to the quality of the writing and the actors as well, is their stories are so good. You don't miss Ramy in those episodes. You're quite happy to follow these characters for an entire episode. You don't even think about, oh, where's Ramy? You know, where's Ramy going to pop up and stuff like that. That's how good the show was, and I thought that was a really sort of interesting, bold take, and I really liked it. And I'm not going to spoil. I can't really sort of talk much because I've seen season 2, but it does follow similar patterns, and I have to say I really did enjoy that. And the episode that's set in his childhood, I thought was probably the boldest one, and the one I think I was really sort of shocked by, but I thought it was probably one of the best episodes in this season, and I wonder if we might get to talk about that one a little more, because it certainly went in a way that I didn't expect, because I think that's when the sort of tone of the series really sort of starts to shift from the sort of boy sort of romantic comedy of it's all about, you know, he's trying to get laid and he masturbates a lot, and then it becomes something else entirely.
I actually just to touch up on that episode, because obviously it starts with young Ramy, and so I actually thought that was just going to be the cold open, and then they had the little title sequence, and I was expecting it to jump back to like old Ramy and sort of doing whatever he was doing. I was so confused at first that it sort of decided to stay with that storyline, and then the fact that it played it, I mean, you're right, it was very bold, and in a sense it couldn't have worked, but the fact that they managed to pull it off, I think it's just a testament to how well crafted this show is, because it was unexpected, but they managed to still hold you in that episode.
Absolutely. And the fact that you just said, you know, touched it and also pulled it off in referring to an episode about masturbation. Well done, you.
We've touched on it there about the family. You know, we've got his mother, we've got his father, we've got his sister, and we've got, of course, Uncle Nassim. What did you make of sort of the journey that we go through with his family? I know one of my favourite episodes of the season was his mother. You know, I think I really felt for her in that moment where she's out there, she becomes an Uber driver. She's trying to find her own place in the world, and she feels that she's made this connection with this person, and it all kind of falls apart. You know, I've really enjoyed sort of getting to know the family through this season, and that was been completely unexpected, and one of the highlights of the show for me and what makes it really unique. What were some of your, you know, favourite kind of, what were some of your thoughts really actually on sort of this journey with the family through the season?
I really liked it. It reminded me a lot of my own family at times, in sort of in just even the little details. Like there's an episode early on in the season where they're all playing Candy Crush, and I don't know what it is, but that Candy Crush is like a big game in like Asian households. So that I got a wee chuckle out of that. Or towards the end of the season when he goes off to Egypt and his parents are packing him suitcases full of gifts to take back, which again is another thing that I've experienced in my own life. And then the families, when he gets to Egypt, they're rummaging through the suitcases, being like, "What did you bring me?" Like just little details like that. I just found so enjoyable because I've experienced them in my own life. And then I think with the sort of deep dive into his actual family, if anything, it just made me more considerate for my family because we all have a tendency to get wrapped up in our own problems, and sort of what I was touching upon earlier, you forget that there's a whole world around you, and every person has their own struggles. And sort of just seeing, the mum struggle in this, or the sister struggle, it just sort of made me more conscious, I guess, of the world around me and of my family. And I think it's a sort of really beautiful thing when a show can sort of just make you appreciate your family more around you.
As a side question, always, what would your family make of if they watched this program? We always think of sort of A24. Their demographic is people like us, young, hip, disposable income, love going to the cinema, no problem spending daft money on a T-shirt. Do you think your family would enjoy this kind of program? We've spoken about it. There are certain graphic content to it, but do you think parents, brothers, sisters, would they enjoy this, or is this ultimately still a show for the typical A24 demographic?
I mean, I think the way the show's constructed makes it primarily for that A24 demographic. I feel like it is still, for lack of a better term, a bit artsy for my family, but it is something that I would love to show them one day because I feel like there is so much relatability in it. And sort of again just seeing that story told in such a funny and warm manner, I feel like it's something they would really appreciate. Again, just the little details where they can probably see their own lives in it, and they can probably see their family members where I've obviously seen mine. I feel like it is something they would appreciate in that sense. Again, I'm not sure if they would maybe enjoy it just because of how it is constructed. I'm not sure necessarily how to expand upon that, but I feel like in some ways it's not your conventional sitcom. Like I feel like my family are more into sort of like conventional TV, and I feel like this is maybe not as I guess normal in that sense. So I feel like they would appreciate it, maybe not enjoy it.
What did you make of sort of the family journey through the season? I mean, it's been in the back of my mind, and it's only just clicked that his mum is the stepmother from Succession, another one of my favourite shows of the past few years, and it's just finally clicked there. I felt the need to share that brain fart with everyone. So, Dallas, what did you make of this family journey through season one?
I still haven't seen Succession.
Yeah, neither have I.
Oh, guys.
It's not A24. I don't have time. But no, what I thought was interesting is there's some real sort of characters now. One of my sort of, I hate to use the word favorite characters, but perhaps most interesting characters was Uncle Nassim, who, I don't know, given the fact it's A24, I don't know, could have starred in his own sort of Uncut Gems spin-off. He sort of feels like he works on the same street as Howie in Uncut Gems, but he represents like the old ways. He's very sort of hard and fast on his sort of faith in what he believes, especially when talking to the sort of female members of the family and stuff like that about what they should be doing and stuff like that. And sort of Ramy represents the sort of new generation of Muslim Americans and stuff like that. So there's a lot of sort of back and forth there between the two, and I can't spoil it, but let's just say that he's got some interesting character arcs ahead. But still not the most likable character. But I did like the way that, and also like we say, when he sort of has this sort of crisis of faith when his dad finds out that he's been having an affair and stuff like that, and goes off to find himself in Egypt, only to find that everyone in Egypt is more obsessed with rap music and the Fast and Furious movies coming out of America than they are with showing him the traditional sites. They want to go to a Chili's restaurant instead. So I think that's quite interesting that everyone's got their idea of the homeland and the faith and stuff like that, but basically they've their idea is not always matching up with reality. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of way to view it as well.
The one thing we've spoken about there is a lot about sort of the family as well, but for such a tight TV show as well, we're introduced to a lot of really great supporting characters as well. We have someone like Stevie, we have Mo, we have Ahmed. What do you think of sort of all these other characters that kind of populate the Ramy New Jersey universe, I guess?
They were so good. I loved the sort of friendship with Ahmed, Mo, and Ramy. It was just so enjoyable. And also his dynamic with Steve. I kind of wanted a bit more on it. I mean, they sort of touch up on how they met at the end of the flashback episode. I would love to know more about their friendship, even more about the friendship between Ramy, Mo, and Ahmed as well. But I love that dynamic, and again, just the conversations that Ramy was having, how they were different with Steve, and then how they were different with Mo and Ahmed, and obviously, again, that sort of culture and society thing sort of represented through characters, which was really enjoyable. And that episode with Stevie, and when he obviously goes and sort of on a date, that was also a fantastic episode.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil too much, but that was definitely one of the highlights of this season for me. Dallas, what did you make of sort of these supporting characters? I'd actually just read when I was doing the prep for this that Steve Way, who plays Stevie, is actually going to be getting his own Apple TV show as well. So that'll be something that'll be really interesting to see. I thought, as kind of Awais said, like, it's not just sort of showing one type of representation. It's kind of really putting itself out there with other individuals as well. What did you make of it?
I thought like the friendship, it felt very, very real. Like the main group of friends with like Ahmed and stuff like that. It felt like they'd known each other their entire lives. It was an easy back and forth. It felt like they were probably friends off camera as well as on. It sort of reminded me of like the way they talked with the band was like just use the word banter. Oh, I hate myself. The sort of like Trent, Mikey, and that in Swingers, they had the same sort of they sort of bust each other's chops, but they're always there for each other, and it's sort of an interesting look at friendship and who you can count on as your friends when you are potentially an outsider, and that's what's explored in the sort of flashback episode, which sort of looks at a very specific moment in time. I mean, I don't know if we go into spoils on that, but how basically his classmates at school start to view him differently, and then he finds a friend in the form of Stevie, who himself, being disabled, is also sort of looked at differently as an outsider. And I think and then that it leads on to the great episode where you sort of start to see their sort of the depths of their friendship, and what was one of the most cringe-worthy episodes of TV I've watched in a while. It was like, you're just hoping something terrible didn't happen, because it looked like it could have at several points. Not like office cringy, but just like real sort of awkward cringe. But I'm glad it worked out all right in the end. But yeah, it was nail-bitingly cringy at times.
Well, I think at this point we've probably done a really good job of selling this show. So if you've got this far and you've not checked out Ramy Season 1, I would say now is your time to dive in, as I think we can now kind of dive into, perhaps for the last stretch of this episode, spoilers or anything kind of goes about sort of the ending and highlights of the season. So Awais, what were some of your maybe favourite moments or episodes this season?
I mean, episode 6 and 7 with this Dina and Mesa, they're sort of individual episodes I loved. I loved that insight into their lives. As far as like favorite moments go, we keep talking about this flashback episode. That was so fascinating because I think that's the episode that I realized, okay, this isn't a sitcom. It's not funny in the conventional sense. Because obviously it's Ramy experiencing 9/11. and sort of slowly being pushed out by his classmates, and aged like 10, 11 as well, I should say. Which was what really sort of struck me the most, was how kids sort of took the media on their shoulders at such a young age. And there's a wee moment in that where his dad and his mum are having a conversation about a pool party that was supposed to happen. And then the dad's like, oh no, it was cancelled, because obviously it's still quite recently. Sorry, the mum was like, oh, it was cancelled because it's quite recent after 9/11. And then he goes to school and one of the girls asks him, oh, Ramy, why weren't you at the pool party? And I just found that such a powerful moment. And then obviously later on when he has that conversation with Osama bin Laden as well, just it was so heartbreaking to sort of see his whole world skewed within 20 minutes. Because it starts out so funny and so real with this friendship, and by the end, the way his sort of life fell apart. I mean, it gave so much context and emotion for the rest of the season, and it was so heartbreaking to watch.
What about for yourself, Dallas? What were some of your highlights?
That episode, I mean, was the highlight episode for me. I thought it was so well done, how it moved from very sort of broad, sort of almost American Pie comedy about all the conversations about jerking off and stuff like that, and then he goes off to the toilet to do it at school, and then comes back to class and discovers that 9/11's happening. It's like a real powerful moment, and that conversation sort of in by like sort of talking to Osama bin Laden could have easily gone horribly wrong, but the fact is that they pull it off really perfectly. And I think what it does is it sort of makes you sort of think about it, sort of confronts you sort of your own thoughts on stuff like this, and makes you think about things and how you view sort of that religion and stuff like that, because there's sort of certain aspects of it that I wasn't expecting, like when he goes on a date with this woman and they go back to her car and she's very forward, and then he's like not really expecting it, and he's got his own judgments, and then Uncle Nassim is very strict Muslim, but then he's almost sort of racist towards Jewish people who he works with on the streets, and it sort of has that sort of Spike Lee sort of do the right thing sort of real sort of eye-opening on sort of racial commentary on that, people are racist towards them, but then some people, they don't like certain other people, and I think everyone's got their own sort of views on different cultures and religions and stuff like that. It was really sort of interesting to sort of see that. And then sort of one of the other interesting episodes, the final episode, I think, as well, where it sort of then sort of starts to maybe tip back towards the potentially broad comedy, but still manages actually to keep it into a nice sort of emotional place with a will they, won't they, should they, shouldn't they conversation at the end about where it was going to go. And I'm not going to say anything more on that because I have seen season 2, but you haven't, so
I know, I'd be sitting there imagining me at the end like, so guys, what do you think is going to happen in next season 2? That has been torpedoed from the talking points, rest assured. I mean, I share a lot of your favourite points there. I mean, that flashback episode, I mean, you nailed it, Wace. I thought, like, that's the cold open. And that's when I realised the scope that this show can go into. I mean, my heart broke for him that moment. Like, he's kind of gone off to the bathroom and he's returned, and just like his life has completely been thrown away. Well, not thrown away, but completely been thrown upside down. And just that ending scene with sort of like Osama bin Laden really surprised me. And it's rare, like, we've watched 100 odd A24 films and I'm surprised every so often, but this really surprised me. I was like, I remember sort of I kind of zoned out for like a few seconds. I think I'd got distracted by something, and then I kind of looked up. I was like, I've missed a little bit here. Like, is that Osama bin Laden? Right, I'm going to skip back a few seconds. And just like the quality of that writing and scene, and just like the confidence to do that, then to put that onto like broadcast kind of, TV and streaming, I just thought it was really bold. And you watch something like that and you think, this guy, Ramy Youssef, has been told, do whatever you want, pitch it however you want. Like, I could imagine like certain other networks potentially sitting a bit uneasy about Osama bin Laden sitting down with a young boy and having like a kind of grooming conversation over like a table. But like, I was watching it and I was thinking, like, Osama bin Laden's making some really good points here. Like, that's a really interesting point about the strawberries and Americans in summer. And I just thought, just incredible writing. And I know I've touched on it, but like the fact that it dives into his family, like I just love the one where it's about her becoming the Lyft driver, and like my heart broke when she's sitting there because like she realizes that this person is just like really likes her, thinks that because she speaks French, and him and his wife get in, and just like that moment we've all been there where like we've just realized like our life has gone completely down the bin, or we've been really disappointed, but we've still got to just soldier on for another 5-10 minutes, just get something done. And just that wave of like emotion that comes over you, I really felt that, and her frustration in that scene. And like I love the episode with like his sister, where she's like off to have sex, and like she's sat with this guy that he seems like a hashtag good guy, and then he's immediately like trying to like objectify her with like racial stereotypes of like trying to chat about like jihad and burqas and everything. And it's just like, can you not just like have sex with me as like a normal person? And try as he might, this guy just can't seem to break it. And you know, the episode where they go, Stevie and Ramy go to meet up with this girl, and like it's just so incredibly awkward, and just the direction that goes. I just thought like, this is great TV. Why have I taken a year and a half to watch it? Why can't I just go watch season 2 right now? So
you can.
I know that's exactly what's going to happen after this. Yeah, so I just thought like this was a show I knew nothing about, and I'm so glad that I went in as blind as possible. And I felt like I went to so many friends afterwards like, I know I'm really late to the party, but like, how good's Ramy? And so many people were like, oh, I've not seen it, or yeah, it's that thing on Hulu. Like, if anyone's listening to this, or anyone that hasn't seen it, what's taking you so long? Don't be me in Dallas. Be like Awais and actually have watched all of the first 2 seasons.
But I think it's also, I mean, you mentioned it there, when you're talking about the sisters episode, it sets up so many scenes that you think are going to be funny, and then they turn into something so incredibly sort of powerful. And obviously the scene with, I mean, only A24 can make a scene about 10-year-old kids talking about jerking off turn into something so sad, obviously, when he runs off into the forest. And then when she's with this guy, at first it is kind of funny that he is like this, and he is a bit of a cartoon character, and then it turns into something kind of sad for her. And then obviously for the mom, so many of her sort of Lyft encounters are, you know, they're awkward, and I was sort of cringing when she's giving them food and things like that. And it is all funny setup, and then again it turns into something so moving. And I think the show does that superbly. It uses comedy as a tool to like set up these situations that turn into something so unexpected and so powerful by the end of it. And I think Ramy in general it just does that so well.
Yeah, I think there's the moment with the sister, who I think it was before that. It's like when she's like fooling around with a guy in her house, and then the parents come home early, and then you think, oh god, no, but then everyone comes in, and then it's like, then you realize it's actually her own sort of nightmare that's actually playing out and stuff. But it played about like, it's like, oh no, I've been caught by my parents. But then it just goes up to like 11, and then you realize that, you know, this is all her worst sort of fears playing out. And then of course it turns out that reality is almost even much worse than that.
I think it was the fact that Uncle Nassim walked in. That's what
Yes.
made. I was like, oh no, he's the worst person to walk in this situation. And then obviously, yeah, it turns out it's a fantasy, and I was sort of like relieved for her, because I was like, you don't want Nassim catching you doing that.
To touch on, you know, the final kind of episode, obviously Ramy goes to Egypt, and I thought it worked really well as sort of a bookend for sort of the season. You know, we saw at the beginning that Ramy also seems to kind of struggle with sort of stereotyping Muslims, you know, especially kind of women, that they are these holy, you know, at times potentially one-dimensional individuals. And like, it's his cousin that sort of like pulls him up on that, and like they end up sharing a kiss on a bridge. I remember sort of watching that and being like surprised again that they went that bold, because you could almost imagine for a more ignorant member of sort of the audience that was maybe watching Ramy going, oh, look at them, that's kind of their culture, like they have no problems hooking up with their cousins or anything like that. But I thought that was such a really interesting kind of way to go, because they didn't need to do that. Like, that was a really interesting kind of creative choice to go with. And you're almost sitting there like knowing that they're cousins still. I was sitting there like, oh, I hope they kind of share a kiss or have a little moment together. It was a really interesting way to bookend the season. What did you make of the final kind of moment of the season?
I loved it, and I think it sets up a superb season 2, which obviously we're not going to touch upon. But like, I think it was, yeah. I mean, I'm the same as you, and obviously it is a sort of stereotype of like Islam and the culture, you know, on of arranged marriages in general. So I was surprised to see the show lean so hard into that. But at the same time, I did really appreciate it, because it showed you, I guess, what the culture sees, and that is that there can be a spark there, and that it is, at the end of the day, is two people just meeting and falling in love. And yeah, I just really, because you are rooting for them, and at the same time you're sort of like, but they're is that line, because they keep repeating it themselves. They're like, but we're cousins, and as an audience member you're like, but you're cousins, but at the same time you're rooting for it. And I loved that sort of, I just thought it was fantastic, and I think it sets up an interesting second season, and obviously that's explored further. And yeah, I'm not going to say too much more about season 2, but it's good. It's good.
Yeah, yeah. It's that thing about the cousins, but it's like, you know, how much, when you say cousins, you mean like cousins, like blood cousins, or is it like, you know, how it's, you know, a long distance relative is like someone who you call a cousin, and it's like you're thinking, oh, but then it's like there's a clear connection. I mean, he's gone halfway across the world to sort of figure out who he is, what he wants, and sort of find family, and then he sort of finds love within his family. And it's, yeah, you know, it's probably going to end badly, but you kind of still want them to. You can, I mean, the performances of the two of them, Ramy and Amani, they're just great together. So they've got this natural chemistry and stuff like that. So it's sort of, it's like they know. I mean, they admit themselves it's wrong, but there's like this undeniable pull between them, and then it's almost to the point where the audience is saying, yeah, just go for it. Well, what's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? Well, I guess we might find out.
So I think it's safe to say that we all recommend kind of Ramy. Would that be correct?
Oh, 100%.
2 thumbs up.
So we'll obviously kind of come back in a few weeks' time to discuss season 2. We'll all reunite then. So I will be in on the gag of what season 2 is going to be like. I am going to head off and watch that now. But for people that were kind of tuning into this for the first time, Awais, you're a prolific podcaster, blogger, writer, critic. Where can kind of people catch and read all your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Awais. That's where I am most of the time. That's where I'm sharing all my work. Otherwise, 35-minute movies on Spotify. That's a podcast I've been doing recently. We just come for half an hour every week and talk about movies. Otherwise, I write for a few websites, reviews and things like that. But if you follow my Twitter, you can find all of that good stuff there.
Dallas, we were a bit mixed a few weeks ago on Comrade Detective, but are you more excited now about continuing our A24 TV odyssey?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think this is certainly on my street, and dare I say, actually, no, I was going to say it was better than another show that I watched, but we may be discussing that show later on, so I will keep my views to myself. But I'm very excited for season 3.
Yeah, so we will be all back together in a few weeks' time, but next week we will be joined for an interview by Austin Vesely, the writer-director of Slice, so look out for that interview. And thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll all see you again in a few weeks. Take care. Bye.